Good evening, everyone. Welcome to American Advocates. This will be episode 139 coming to you live on Sunday, July 12th, 2026, with obviously the major story that everyone wants to talk about now when it comes to Senator Lindsey Graham dying suddenly at age, whatchamacallit, 71. And really, all I've got to say about that, what I've really been talking about, is this verse right here. Let me look this up real fast. Proverbs 12. Yes, okay. Yes, here we go. Right? No. Thought I had that ready to go, but I don't. Give me one sec. Ah, there it is. Ah, that's what it is. Yes. Proverbs 11:10. When the righteous prosper, the city rejoices. When the wicked perish, there are shouts of joy. And that's really ultimately what has been happening regarding Senator Lindsey Graham's death. Now, you'll see some virtuous type, conservatives out there who will cry foul at all of this and they'll say, "How dare you celebrate death? Why speak ill of the dead? I can't believe you'd celebrate that. You're no better than the people who celebrated Charlie Kirk dying." But the fact of the matter is, Lindsey Graham was a vile, disgusting neocon boomer who didn't serve his own state constituents hardly at all and was at negative on the Republican Party. He will forever be remembered as the senator of Ukraine. That is how we will view him always. He will be remembered as a loving neocon and warmongering man. He leaves behind no family, he had no wife, he has no grandchildren. His legacy is over with. His line is finished. Lindsey Graham is gone. And ultimately, what I'm going to recap for tonight and go over is this notion now, this very in your face reality that is now dawning on the establishment, and it's beautiful to see. And that reality is that the boomers are aging out of existence. This fourth turning will be finished. This fourth turning will flow to completion. And as it does, the establishment will dissolve as the boomers age out, and in its place, a new establishment will be built. And while this is happening, the window is open for us right now to take control and guide this fourth turning and guide this first turning that will be built in its place ourselves, but only if we play it correctly. And that's ultimately what I'm going to go over at the end of tonight's stream. It is very important, actually, that we recognize what's happening now and also understand that it is still a massive uphill battle for us. I'm going to go over all of that and more, but be sure to like the stream if you haven't already. Double tap your phone screens, hit the thumbs up button. It's free to do, and it really does help YouTube push this show out to plenty of people who need to see this. Also, of course, subscribe to American Advocates if you haven't already. I go live every single night, and consider becoming a member today. You'll have to actually excuse me for 1 second. Usually I have this pre-typed up here, but I'm going to share this. I'm sharing this on my X account right now, so you all can sit there, like the stream, wait. Holy shit, why the fuck is this moving so slow? There we go. Most of my viewers don't wind up moseying in anyway for quite a while. Alright, now that that's shared. All right. So here's the deal. Not even, not even 1 hour after ending my live stream last night, I am all over social media, just, doom scrolling on X, reading all the news, looking at everything, and all of a sudden I see Lindsey Graham trending on X, and I click on his name, and I'm thinking to myself too, this is like 2 a.m. Central Time or something. Yeah, 2 a.m. Central Time around ish, because I put out that post on my YouTube as well. And I'm looking at it all, and I'm like, what did he do now? What's Lindsey? Oh my God! Don't tell me Lindsey Graham is celebrating war with Iran. And then I click on his name, and I see like the memorial style photos, which are nothing like this. This is my own. This is my own memorial style photo right here. Loving neocon and warmonger. I have the blue and yellow flowers for the Ukraine flag. This is what I posted on my X. By the way, you all should just follow me on X. Let me share that shit in the. Let me share that shit in the thing too. Why not? Yeah, go follow me on X. Make yourselves useful. I need the engagement boost on X. Trying to grow the X page a little bit. The algorithm's gotten very weird on X, but I do post a lot of original stuff on there that you'll never see on YouTube. So, yeah, David Cooper, you're like my super fan. You may be one of my best followers. This guy, David Cooper, hypes my videos with the hype points, which has been making a huge difference for discoverability on this channel. He follows me on X, comments on all of my stuff. This is the model. David Cooper is the model. David Cooper is the model. He's the model citizen here at American Advocates, and I really do appreciate it. Welcome, Jonathan Bray. Good to see you. Welcome, Michael Cox, as well. Good to see you as well. And no, I'm not going to be careful about speaking ill of the dead. Lindsey Graham was a gay, homosexual, neoconservative scumbag. And man, oh man, am I thrilled that he's fucking dead. I am fucking thrilled that he's gone. Fuck Lindsey Graham, may he rest in piss and in hell. Yes, that's how I feel. I'm not worried about the whole virtuous thing. I'm not really concerned about speaking ill of the dead. If the dead doesn't want to be, if they don't want to be speaking, if the dead don't want to be spoken ill of, perhaps they should live their life accordingly. And Lindsey Graham did anything but that. So fuck him. May we all piss on his grave. And any tombstone that doesn't look like this is unacceptable for Lindsey Graham, the senator of Ukraine who cares more about foreign countries than his own South Carolinian constituents. That's what we're going to go over today, by the way. I was viewing it on X last night as I was telling the story. I click on his name, I see all the memorial photos, and immediately I celebrate. I celebrate it. And let this be a memo, by the way, going forward for really anybody. All of us should take a moment to examine the statements I myself just made about Lindsey Graham. This whole don't speak ill of the dead thing. The reason why we say that is because we have a deep-seated fear internally that we too will be spoken poorly of after we're gone. But recognize this. If you are, it's almost always because you deserve to be. There are people who are not spoken ill of after their death. Gandhi, Gandhi. There are people like that. Mr. Rogers from PBS. If you want to be remembered well, then live well. Otherwise, no, we don't actually owe you any form of courtesy after you're gone. And many people will, in fact, celebrate your death. People don't say that about other figures like Mussolini or Hitler. Nobody ever says, oh man, I can't believe you would speak ill about Hitler. He's dead, bro. Hitler died. Why are you speaking ill of the dead? No, nobody cares when you're doing that. But all of a sudden, it's Lindsey Graham, a boomer neocon fucker. And people go, well, be careful, man. Be careful, okay? I mean, he didn't have any kids, so they can't possibly see you trash-talking him because his line is now non-existent since he was a closet homosexual. And he doesn't have kids. He doesn't have a wife. His parents are dead. He has one sister out there randomly. I don't know if maybe she's dead too. I don't even know. I didn't bother to look because I don't care. But there's nobody out there to be offended. This is how pathetic Lindsey Graham is. When he died, his office had to ask for respect during these sombering times. The office of Lindsey Graham said, please respect this sombering time while we seek peace and comfort. His office, full of staffers, who will have a new job working for a different senator next month, and within a year they won't even remember or care about Lindsey Graham. And that's the legacy Lindsey Graham's left behind. That and so much more. And Here's the deal. He's reportedly died of cardiac arrest at age 71, and he really does leave behind nothing. No wife and no kids. And the reason for the Bible verse that I read off at the start, by the way, which is once again Proverbs 11:10, when the righteous prosper, the city rejoices, but when the wicked perish, there are shouts of joy, is because that perfectly applies to Lindsey Graham. He was a wicked human being, and despite technically being a senator of South Carolina, like I said, Lindsey Graham seemed to almost exclusively, especially at certain times, focus on foreign wars. From the years 2022 to 2026 up until yesterday now, thank God, over the course of basically the last 4 years, he had visited Ukraine 10 times as a United States senator. 10 times this man visited Ukraine. He was insisting the entire time, too, by the way, all of those hundreds of billions of dollars that were your taxpayer dollars that went towards funding this Ukraine war because we want to fight Russia through them. He's always spoken so highly of that, saying that that is some of the best money the United States has ever spent. Gen Z and millennials are struggling to own homes. We're being priced out of everything. Our cost of living is sky high. We're being taxed into motherfucking oblivion as they find new ways to tax us rather than eliminating the taxes on us. We can't afford anything nowadays. We can't even afford children of our own. Lindsey Graham grew up in a time where he could have had kids as a boomer politician making $174,000 a year. He literally just chose not to because that's how pathetic of a little man he was. Meanwhile, Gen Zers who actually are growing up and kind of want to have that ideal nuclear family type situation with a good job and a nice home and a couple of kids with a nice wife and 2 cars in the driveway can't afford it, and instead they get to watch absolute scumbag motherfuckers like Lindsey Graham literally speak publicly about how hundreds of billions of our dollars going towards Ukraine to fund a war that they really probably can't win was the best money that we've ever spent. And for this reason alone, he will absolutely be remembered as the senator for Ukraine. That's what Lindsey Graham was. He's not South Carolina's senator. He didn't give 2 shits about South Carolina. He only gave 1 shit about it. And coincidentally, he only ever really did that when it was time for primaries, time for the elections. Speaking of South Carolina, by the way, that state has numerous struggles statewide that were largely ignored by Lindsey Graham. And not for anything, but even if Lindsey Graham had ever acknowledged these issues publicly, which at times he would, briefly in passing, the fact of the matter is what we're seeing on display at the highest level in our office right now, coming from President Donald Trump, is sheer neglect overall for the American people, which they're now again focusing on coincidentally as they now approach the 4.5-month mark to midterms and realize, hey, maybe we need to throw the American citizens and the stupid white motherfucking goy Americans out there a little bit of a bone so maybe they'll vote for us again, because it's starting to look like some of them are actually getting a little frustrated. So maybe we should start doing stuff about that H-1B visa fraud, and maybe we should talk about John Bolton being the deep state and how we're kind of prosecuting him actually, and we should hint that maybe we'll do something with James Comey again, and also maybe we'll throw them a couple of bones when it comes to the economy, and we'll tease this idea of, improving the housing market for them. All to just not care and drop it all together after midterms, of course, but we want to make them feel like they've got to vote for us in order to get what we promised initially. This is how the system works. It's the same at a statewide level. Lindsey Graham couldn't possibly be focused, or couldn't possibly, I should say in past tense, thank Christ, he couldn't possibly have focused on his own state while he was alive because he visited Ukraine 10 times inside of less than 4 years and was focused on Israel when he wasn't in Ukraine. In fact, not even, well, actually about 24 hours ago as of right now, as it stands, or maybe 36 hours ago, I think is more appropriate to say, he had actually just flown back from Ukraine, which I can't imagine to be a more fitting last memory to have of a disgusting neocon warmonger boomer like Lindsey Graham. But nevertheless, South Carolina, as I did some research on this evening, over 13% of the country lives below the poverty line. Never heard Senator Lindsey Graham talk about that. 13% below the poverty line. I heard him talk all the time about how wonderful it was to be sending hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukraine. And I heard him mention things all the time like, oh, to my dying day, I'll support and stand with Israel above all else. I don't really care about the hurricanes that bashed into my state the other year. I, to my dying day, am focused on Israel, he said, and Ukraine. Close to 50% of households, by the way, in a survey of South Carolina, wound up saying that they are barely scraping by month to month. Did Lindsey Graham ever talk about that? Perhaps on his campaign trails for re-election, he did. And then the second he had resecured his office, it was back to Ukraine and back to Israel. South Carolina's education scores, by the way, rank bottom tier in the nation, and they've actually declined even more under Senator Lindsey Graham's watch. Massive demographic change is another issue in South Carolina as well, for the record. This happened under Senator Lindsey Graham's watch, too, in part, as he was one of the senators, Republicans, who also advocated for this term called comprehensive immigration reform, which sounds like it's the right thing. Comprehensive immigration reform. It's almost like a trick, that kind of verbiage. Similar to how in the Federal Reserve they use the term nowadays quantitative easing, which they've actually moved away from, because when the American Goyim figure out these terms, they then have to create new ones that you can't understand. But at one point, the Federal Reserve always called it quantitative easing, when really that just meant insane inflation, because we're printing millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars of new money to buy off and pay back the debt and borrow against ourselves. Comprehensive immigration reform is basically the same kind of concept here. It's basically just a fancy word that means amnesty. Let's be comprehensive about our immigration reform and grant amnesty to those who have already been here for a while. And so in South Carolina, what we saw was massive demographic change and a massive demographic shift in South Carolina, while Lindsey Graham was the senator of that state. And the parts of South Carolina, by the way, the sections, the facets of South Carolina that are doing better off over the last decade are truly doing better off despite Lindsey Graham being their senator. Stop everything, though. We do have a $5 super chat tariff from BeckFan77, and he says, "We are just lucky he didn't try to bomb the shit out of South Carolina poverty. Happy for the children that will never be war orphans." Well, true that. True that, and thank you for the $5 super chat tariff. Now here's the deal, and I want to use this as sort of a moment to remind everybody of this. The fact that Lindsey Graham's legacy will forever be tied to Ukraine, Israel, and foreign wars and neoconservatism as a senator that was always meant to represent the state that he was the senator of shouldn't sit well with anybody. In fact, it should really be deeply troubling to you that not only was it Lindsey Graham who's like this, but we have several senators, actually truthfully on both sides of the aisle, that are guilty of being this way. I think back to Democrat Senator Chris Van Hollen, who, upon finding out that an illegal wife-beating alien from his state was deported to El Salvador to be thrown into CCOT prison, did everything he could, dropped everything he could, and on taxpayer dollar dimes, wound up flying down to El Salvador to meet with the alleged human trafficker, definite wife-beater, Kilmar Garcia. He was a Democrat. He got a lot of flack for that from Republicans. But all of a sudden, when it's the Republican side of the aisle, like once again Lindsey Graham, who flew back from Ukraine on whose dime? Ours. And what was he advocating out there for? More war, which we also fund. We give Ukraine the foreign aid for, right? All of a sudden, the Republicans don't maintain the same narrative that they should. They should criticize Chris Van Hollen for pulling a ridiculous stunt like that and advocating for a wife-beating illegal alien. Conversely, they should also be criticizing people like Lindsey Graham, and there's other ones. I mean, Mitch McConnell right now, we're looking for proof of life. I'm going to get to that in a second. But they call Mitch McConnell China Mitch, and Mitch McConnell is another neocon scumbag married to a Chinese woman wife. So these senators, many of these senators, really do display, and it's almost always these boomer senators, they really do display at the highest degree what is wrong with our political system. And that is that these senators who are supposed to represent state interest in the federal government instead focus almost entirely on foreign wars, on Israel's desires, and on supporting other countries that mean nothing to me as an American, like Ukraine. Their actual job, by the way, is to pass laws that affect the whole country, but they're supposed to be doing that while having their state in mind. The well-being of their state, the well-being of their state's citizens and constituents should always be ever present in the mind of a senator when they're sitting down to basically pass legislation, pass laws that comes up from the House. They're supposed to look at that and revise it and pass it back down for finalization. And these senators should be thinking, how does this law impact the people of the state where I live? That is like their number one job. So why ever are they talking almost day and night, many of these senators, about foreign wars and foreign countries? Really ask yourself that. Ted Cruz, another great example. So that's the deal with them. And while they do, by the way, it's not to say they're not supposed to be involved in some degree with some foreign affairs related issues. They do vote on things like military funding and budgets that are associated with military spending, the defense budget, etc. And they also have to deal with passing treaties for peace, etc. But the bulk of a senator's job is literally tied to the state that they're elected out of. So that's why I say it should be deeply troubling when you see these senators who seem solely focused on foreign wars just continuing to hold office and going in front of the press or on their social media. The culmination of their updates on Twitter or on Facebook, it's always Ukraine, it's always Israel, it's always war. It's never, hey, I want to deal with the problems of my state citizens, the people who live in the state that put me in the seat, the senator's seat. I want to fix their problems. I really am deeply troubled by what's going on in my own home state. Can we please do something to help them? You don't see that anymore. And that's perhaps one of the biggest issues plaguing our nation. Consequently, by the way, it's also why so many people are rejoicing over the passing of Lindsey Graham, because he didn't really earn the right to be praised as he now descends into hell. It's one less neocon, is really how he's being looked at, and rightfully so. Now, here's something else to cover here, too, and I want to discuss this. I've already been posting about this on Twitter, and it has to deal with how the Republican side of the aisle is handling this, because already, people just can't leave well enough alone. Already we are seeing all these ridiculous kind of conspiracy theories coming out of the these theorists coming out of the woodworks, and these conspiracy theories surfacing. It happened very quickly last night. I was already seeing the beginnings of it then, as I was up way too late to begin with. And then I woke up this morning and it had already exploded by the time I got up this morning and checked my Twitter. And it has to deal with this idea that Russia may have been responsible for Lindsey Graham's death. So I'm going to go over it with you all here tonight, this idea that perhaps Russia was involved in all of this. That's what we're going to cover next. Be sure to like the stream, by the way, if you haven't already. Double tap your phone screens, hit the thumbs up button. It is free to do, and it really does help this show perform better in YouTube's algorithm. Also, be sure to subscribe for more content like this. I go live every single night. So let's get into this. Here's the deal with all of this. Lindsey Graham, as I mentioned, was last seen spotted inside of a Ukraine suicide drone factory. In fact, I think I have the photo of that, don't I? Don't I? Or no, maybe I don't. Oh, yeah, this was actually him giving the speech outside of the factory. Yeah, that's right. Okay, I have that one. He was last seen inside of a Ukraine suicide drone factory. I included the photo in the thumbnail for this live stream. Stop everything. We do have a $5 super chat tariff from Howard Clegg, one of the founding members on this channel. Really appreciate you being here, Howard. Thanks so much for the $5 super chat. That really does help the channel out quite a bit. I appreciate that. Seriously, thank you. So, this was him outside of that factory, and he gave a speech, and he did seem of sound mind, body, and spirit, just to be frank with you. There's no doubt about that when it comes to that. His speech was, unlike Mitch McConnell, who I played that clip of from earlier this year, where it was a stark difference from January of this year compared to January of last year. Mitch McConnell is losing it. Mitch McConnell is like gone for the most part. He's almost a zombie. Lindsey Graham, granted, to his credit, was sharp. He was sharp and very clearly spoken and easy to understand. I will say that. But, you know, as I've alluded to, very fitting final photographs for such a lousy senator. This is the last image we have of him in fucking Ukraine. A senator for South Carolina, last photograph in Ukraine, a country that he's not the senator of, but truthfully will be remembered as the senator of. He's the Ukraine senator. From now on this channel, Lindsey Graham, if we ever have to bring up his filthy name, will be Senator for Ukraine. Neocon, loving neocon, senator of Ukraine. And here's the deal with this. He was inside the suicide drone factory in Ukraine, holding up one of the drones with a big smile on his face because, man, he loves war and death. Always has and always did. And that's the last photo. Then he gives the speech. And here's what happened during the process of all of this. The report has been confirmed, because Russia was open about it, that they had been threatening to bomb that very precise factory. And so what Russia did as a courtesy was give the United States, and Ukraine for that matter, advance notice of this. They said, hey, we know about this factory, we're going to blow it up. Ukraine and Russia, when it comes to their war, has been heating up tremendously, by the way. They've been literally striking the hell out of each other and targeting infrastructure, oil, etc. Ukraine's been punching well above their weight class, too. I do give them credit on that. I give them props. I don't think they're going to defeat Russia still, and I think they will lose, but they have been punching well above their weight class. Russia's getting sick of it, though. So Russia gave the United States advance notice and said, basically, pull your diplomats, ambassadors, and any politicians, like, I think they even mention that because they know he's there all the time. Pull them out of the area. Leave the area because we are bombing that factory. And the United States, of course, did that. So all of our diplomats and ambassadors, along with Lindsey Graham, left. And Lindsey Graham flew back home to Washington, D.C., during which time, by the way, Russia did what they said, and they bombed and pretty much completely destroyed that Ukrainian drone factory that Lindsey Graham was last seen photographed in literally 48 hours ago, holding up the suicide drone and smiling about it. Can't wait for this one to just nosedive right into a human being and explode them into a million pieces of flesh. Nothing excited Lindsey Graham more than that. And I'm not a Russian advocate here. I despise drones. I think man should be able to look up at the sky and see nothing but hope and hope alone. The sun, the skies, the rain, that's it. You shouldn't have to worry about drones descending down on you and diving into you and ending your existence. It truly is actually a disgusting reality that we live in when it comes to war. Nevertheless, that's what they did. They blew it up. And now people, of course, they have to do it, right? No death can ever just be a normal death if they have a name of notoriety these days. Everything is a conspiracy theory. So they say, oh, isn't that interesting? Russia destroys the factory that Lindsey Graham was photographed in. They destroy the factory and then Lindsey Graham dies not even 2 days later. That just seems too good to be true. What really is going on here? And unfortunately, I will admit, what further complicates all of this is there was this post on social media from one of these top-level advisors that's close to Vladimir Putin, exists within Russia, and I can't even remember his name, some super Russian-sounding name. He's a soldier close to Vladimir Putin, and he had made a public tweet a while back about how we'd all be better off if Lindsey Graham was dead. Okay, it's out there. So people are using this now, and they're basically saying, that settles it. Russia killed Lindsey Graham. They shot him with a heart attack gun while he was in the Ukraine drone facility, and he must not have felt it or noticed. And then he flew back home, and then he died after they bombed the facility. They wanted Lindsey Graham dead. Here's the deal, though. Honestly, guys, come on. First of all, Lindsey Graham is almost certainly dead as a result of natural causes. I hate to break it to you. Sometimes death is not mysterious. Sometimes death is really not all that exciting, not even when it's names of notoriety passing. Sometimes it's just they died of old age, of what we would consider. No death is really truly natural if you believe in the Bible. We were supposed to be created like Adam. So it's always kind of startling, right? There's always this element there where it's like, oh, that sucks. It sucks that people die. We have that part of us that just despises the idea of it because at our core we know it wasn't the original intent of creation. But what we consider nowadays to be natural causes because of age is what it looks like Lindsey Graham died from. And I'm going to go over it to really instill this and kind of prove the point in all of this. Because the same people, and this is what's fascinating to me about this, the same people who now literally have every right to be criticizing Candace Owens for her conspiracy theories on how Israel killed Charlie Kirk, as now this Tyler Robinson court case moves forward and there's now video evidence reportedly being shown in the courtroom of Tyler Kirk shooting the gun and killing Charlie Kirk. And all of this evidence now, these ballistic experts that are in the courtroom talking about how and why that happened, and etc. And her case is, Candace Owens' entire conspiracy case is being destroyed, and she's being humiliated on the internet over it. On this channel, many, 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 many months ago, too, I think probably 2 or 3 months after Kirk died, I addressed this, and I said the same. I said, guys, I know Zionism is a problem. I am not an Israel advocate at all. I am literally the opposite. I'm an America first conservative, and I really despise Israeli foreign influence in our government, and I really do recognize things like the USS Liberty and the JFK assassination, and really at this point I would throw 9/11 in there too, to be honest with you. But despite all of that, believe it or not everything is Israel. And really, that actually damages us when we turn it into that. When we allow it to be turned into that, you almost fatigue people with overload. When you turn on the news the night before and it says sunshine and you wake up to rain, if you are insistent that the Jews have their weather machines out down in the Midwest again, and they're fucking with the weather to time it up so that it rains every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday when you have off from work, and you just know it's a Zionist conspiracy theory to ensure that you can enjoy your life on your days off, because why is it sunny every Monday through Thursday and then rains Friday through Sunday? It must be the Jews and the Zionists. They don't want white people, or Americans for that matter in general, black people, white people, Hispanics. They don't want you enjoying your time off. If you really allow yourself to go that deep down the rabbit hole, you actually damage the credibility of what the truth actually is. You actually damage the movement in general when it comes to pointing out the very real issues when it comes to Israeli foreign influence and AIPAC and Miriam Adelson and the real shit that happens, like, you know, the Mossad agents that were literally arrested after being spotted photographing themselves while the Twin Towers were being destroyed, or the USS Liberty, that's literally a documented event where they fucking destroyed the ship, killing hundreds of our sailors and injuring them, or the JFK assassination, which can't be proven, but the more you look into it, the more you can very obviously conclude JFK had his eyes on Dimona and the nuclear site, and he was questioning AIPAC along with Robert Kennedy, who also coincidentally got shot in the head twice. So when you take it too far like that, say it rained today, it was supposed to be sunny, must be the Jews, you really are doing a disservice to the movement. In my opinion at that time, and I still stand by that too as well today, because I think I called it out in December, and I said, what is Candace Owens doing? Why do this? It's now being shown and unraveled to be this way. And now she's being humiliated, rightfully so, in my opinion, by the right wing. And it's sad because it does really now damage our case going forward, where they're going to cite this in the future. They're going to now start saying, and I see it all the time, people, they always intentionally misspell it, the Joos, and they go, everything's the Jews with you, the Jews. And it's just like, and then they're basically saying, okay, Candace Owens Jr., or, you know, and it's just like, that's a problem now. But what's funny about that is, while they have a leg to stand on against Candace Owens, many of these people now are turning on a dime, basically, and they're saying, but Russia definitely killed Lindsey Graham. And this is the ironic part of all of this. So that's what I find funny, and that's what I want to just point out as the irony in all of this. But they're conversely creating their own conspiracy theory now about it. It was Russia. Some of them are saying it was Iran. Well, Iran wanted to kill Lindsey Graham too. It's ridiculous. So now they're kind of coming to this conclusion. Well, it may have been a Russia-Iran team-up. It's Gog and Magog, and they wanted Lindsey Graham dead. Here's the deal. And I posted about this on my X account today, by the way. Again, you should go follow me on Twitter. I do post different content on there that's unique. It's at American_Advo, ADVO. Follow me on Twitter. But here's what I posted on there as a reminder to people to try to sober people back up to reality which is that Lindsey Graham was 71 years old. I've heard people. I was listening to actually, I think, Asmongold today while I was doing some work, and he said, "Oh, with his kind of money, Lindsey Graham's money, because he was made 174,000 a year, and he's worth a couple $1,000,000 upon death. With his money and net worth, they're like Lindsey Asmongold was, and Asmongold's a pretty smart guy, by the way. I'm not trying to throw shade, but not that Asmongold will ever. I'm too small of a channel for him to see this, but he is a pretty smart guy. But here's the deal: 71 years old is old. It actually is old. There's no amount of money that doesn't make 71 years old not old. There's no amount of money that doesn't guarantee that you can survive your 71st year. There's always going to be a chance that you die. Really, every year you age, there's an increasing chance that you're going to die, by the way. And so 71 is old. Magnifying that is the fact that Lindsey Graham was not some Jack LaLanne. My boomers in chat will love that reference, by the way. Howard will probably. Howard, you gotta love that, because I love Jack LaLanne. And maybe even Lifeguard if he's here. I'm not sure if he's even here, but if you're old enough to know Jack LaLanne, you're an OG and you're amazing. But this was not a Jack LaLanne type figure, okay? This was not the father of modern fitness over here, is essentially what I'm trying to say. Jack LaLanne is the opposite of what Lindsey Graham was. Lindsey Graham is somebody, and by the way, Jack LaLanne lived to about 96 or 98 years old. He was an absolute stud when it came to fitness. And the only thing that took him out was pneumonia, because he was 96. And even then, it gets to a point where you can be as healthy as possible, but age will claim you. It's just how life works, sadly. Now, Lindsey Graham, it's almost remarkable Lindsey Graham lived to 71, if you know all of the facts, by the way. Lindsey Graham, unlike Jack LaLanne, was probably all of 5'6" and about 235 pounds. Nowhere near muscular either. It's not like a solid muscular, maybe a little chubbier than he should have been, 235. He was just a slovenly 235 pounds. And it looks like he had actually gone through the trouble of losing some weight as he got older to some degree, but he was not in shape. He was very unhealthy. And he was old on top of it. In addition to that, you have to understand some of the history of Lindsey Graham. He had been struggling with high blood pressure for 40 years of his life almost. Since his 30s, he had been struggling with high blood pressure. His skin there, I don't know if you can see that, it's a little more red than it probably should be. It's a high blood pressure thing. By the way, stop everything. We do have a $5 super chat in here from the Black Sun 14, and he says, that is true about the Jews, and this is coming from a Nazi. If we go so deep to point to the stuff that becomes outlandish, we distract from actual evil. So yeah, it's exactly right. I'm not a fan of them, obviously, overall, and I believe they're a problem to our country, but, they're not actually responsible for everything, okay? They're literally not. Sometimes it just rains. Sometimes it's just the rain, okay? I would say most of the time still, it's just the rain. You want to argue with me about weather machines existing or not? Sure, go tell me about the Cloudmaker machines. I've seen it, all right? But a lot of times it just rains. Sometimes it rains when the weatherman said it was going to be sunny. That's already happened 3 times to me where I live, by the way. I don't care. I have a garden. I love the rain anyway, but that's just how it goes. Sometimes people just die when they're 71. And thank you for the $5, Black Sun. I appreciate you. Anyways, Lindsey Graham struggled with high blood pressure for almost 40 years. He was 71 years old. He was not a healthy person, and he had also developed what's called deep vein thrombosis throughout his life as well, which is very problematic. In addition to that, some of his family history also points to other harsh realities of life. His father died when Lindsey Graham was a young man. Lindsey Graham was 20 years old when both his parents passed away in a short 18-month window. And though I despise Lindsey Graham, that fact does allow me to loan Lindsey Graham's existence with some form of pity, because that is sad. When he was 20, he lost both his parents in a 1.5-year window. His mother passed away very young, actually, at the age of 50. And 18 months later, his father died at the age of 68 of cardiac arrest. Both his parents, by modern standards, died young. If you would at least expect people to live to 70, they both died young. His mom died very young. But his father died young too at age 68 of cardiac arrest. You now fast forward to modern day, Lindsey Graham lived 3 years longer and died of cardiac arrest. And like I said, Lindsey Graham was short and fat. Also, here's what's important to understand. With the high blood pressure and the deep vein thrombosis, the advanced age, the short and fat stature, the history of heart problems in the family very clearly, and not really good longevity when you factor in his parents' lifespans. Recognize the other issue being that Lindsey Graham had literally just gotten off of a 12-hour long airplane flight home to DC from Ukraine. And flying magnifies these risks, especially as you get older. There are a lot of issues that can actually occur as a result of flying with high blood pressure, deep vein thrombosis, and history of cardiac arrest when you're at an advanced age. This is actually very well known, by the way. So that's really, in my opinion, what happened here. If you look at the family history, you look at the recent events, you look at the health complications, then recognize the reality is not spicy, not entertaining, nothing actually mysterious, and truthfully, it's a senator who should have never flown to Ukraine in the first place and should have stayed in his home state or in DC representing his home state, his choice really. But he flew, and he flew for 12 hours to Ukraine and 12 hours back. He got home. Yes, he called President Trump on the phone just hours before he died, and Trump said, well, he sounded tired. He started getting sick even on the phone, but he even made a joke, I can't die now. I got to pass the Save America Act, which actually would have been useful of this bastard to do for us before he went, but he won't get the chance now. He hung up the phone, and he was dead within a few hours after that. And Trump is startled by it, and Trump's worried about the assassination attempt on his life. And now there's questions being asked, and the FBI is investigating it. But this is just the truth here. The truth really is the internet always wants something more sinister behind it all. They want something entertaining to bite into. But the reality check for most of you, literally most of you watching right now even, is that most of you will likely die similarly to this. Without the notoriety, in fact, even. That's even the harsher reality in all of this. I would even say that about myself. I know I have this channel here with a dedicated audience and it's growing pretty well, but the fact of the matter is there's still a very good chance I die and nobody remembers my name. And that certainly applies to most of you as well. You will die, nobody will remember your name except for your direct line. Within a few generations, your name won't be brought up anymore and you will be forgotten about, and all that will matter will be what you did during the time that you had when you get to the throne of judgment before Christ. And he replays your life in front of you and holds you into account before either welcoming you into heaven or casting you into hell. Lindsey Graham is before that throne now, or was very recently. He's gone now. He died suddenly, but there's nothing more behind it. And many of us will die the same way. We're going to get old, and it's going to happen suddenly, and that's going to be it. That's actually the only guarantee that we really have in life, actually, is death itself. In this life, that's the only guarantee we have, is death itself. And if you have the faith for it, then your guaranteed salvation in Christ is another guarantee too. But only if you have the faith for it. If you don't, then your only personal guarantee is you will die one day, and most likely it will be suddenly like Lindsey Graham's. In fact, if you're lucky, it will be suddenly, because otherwise you go slowly and in agony in a nursing home, hooked up to machines. So in some ways, Lindsey Graham's almost blessed. The man was traveling around. He was probably more blessed than he should be, really. He was traveling around still, living life, living in D.C., making a decent amount of money, and got to go quickly. So that's all I've got to say about it when it comes to the conspiracy theory. But there's a lot more to talk about in all of this, because the true irony here in all of this brings us back to the special election this year that was held in his own state, the primaries. And that's really what I want to talk about tonight. The irony is that Trump had endorsed this guy, and really Trump was the original anti-establishment and anti-neocon guy, or at least he was supposed to be. And now what will be remembered about Lindsey Graham's legacy is that he loved and worshipped war in Israel and the Ukraine over the priority of his own state constituents and voters and citizens. He prioritized Ukraine over them, and now Trump endorsed him. And that's really what we're going to be remembering here. And Lindsey Graham, and this is where I'm going to get into this even more, Lindsey Graham, too, by the way, who Trump has called a friend and has been spotted golfing with and celebrated his primary win this year and endorsed him on the campaign trail against Mark Lynch, who was an actual decent America First type candidate. All of this is to say Lindsey Graham 10 years ago. I have this is an old video I have pulled up. They don't want you to remember this. And this is just so true of all the people that Trump has really decided to support and endorse recently. It's equally as true for Lindsey Graham when it comes to this. Lindsey Graham despised Trump 10 years ago. And I have some of that pulled up here. I'm gonna play a portion of that right now. This is Lindsey Graham 10 years ago on CNN.
Says. And disgusted. Well, I want to talk to the Trump supporters for a minute. I don't know who you are, and I don't know why you like this guy. I think what you like about him, he appears to be strong when the rest of us are weak. He's a very successful businessman, and he's going to make everything great. He's going to take all the problems of the world and put them in a box and make your life better. That's what he's selling. Here's what you're buying. He's a race-baiting, xenophobic, religious bigot. He doesn't represent my party. He doesn't represent the values that the men and women who wear the uniform are fighting for. I've been in the Air Force for 33 years. I retired this June. He's the ISIL Man of the Year, by the way. He just got back from Iraq a week ago this Monday.
I know. We interviewed you live from there. You were with Senator John McCain, and you were going into Iraq to get a status report. What were they saying there about all of this?
The military leadership and the diplomatic corps. Now, we have young men and women in harm's way all over the world, particularly in the Mideast. They were concerned about this rhetoric because the enemy will use it against us.
It just keeps going on, but all of that is to remind you that much like everybody else Trump currently finds himself surrounded with for the most part, Mark Levin or, the Lindsey Graham who passed away recently, etc. Many of these people never liked Trump when he was actually good. He talks about how he's a xenophobic, race-baiting, religious bigot who's anti-war and didn't like the Iraq nonsense happening. And it's like you listen to that and then you realize I wish that would have actually turned out to have been true. But now we actually know that Trump has been completely captured by Zionism and the Israeli firsters and the foreign influence and the neocons. And so it's actually not true, which is why Lindsey Graham ultimately wound up liking Trump. It's why Ben Shapiro and Mark Levin ultimately wound up liking and supporting Trump. But recognize this, that just like Ben Shapiro and Mark Levin in 2015 and 2016, who were saying all of the same things and vowing to never vote for Trump, basically saying, by the way, and using the same strategy then that I implore all of us to do now in midterms this year to really spite this Republican Party that's betrayed us anyway, MAGA, etc., they were basically acknowledging, we'll just let Hillary Clinton win because we're not supporting Trump if he's the candidate. They were saying that Lindsey Graham was amongst that rank. He was the same kind of guy. And when Trump was actually running on the things that we wanted, Lindsey Graham despised Trump. And yet here we have Trump mourning his death, talking about it on Truth Social, photographed golfing with them all these years. And that's all Lindsey Graham was. Lindsey Graham, by the way, I have another clip here. Lindsey Graham also criticized. Do I still have it? Oh, maybe I don't. Oh, here it is. Yeah, I do have it. Lindsey Graham also criticized Trump after J6. This is the kind of friend Lindsey Graham was to Trump.
Never get Obama to do that. Obama had a good relationship with him, but with Senator McCain, we begged him, do not leave Iraq. But he did. As to yesterday, it breaks my heart that my friend, a president of a consequence, would allow yesterday to happen. And it will be a major part of his presidency. It was a self-inflicted wound. It was going too far.
So he turned his back on Trump after January 6th. He's still talking about John McCain even in that speech and Iraq and how he begged them to not leave Iraq, which we know was a complete sham of a war. And this is the guy now that the Republican Party wants to memorialize. This is the guy that Trump is mourning the loss of. And this is the guy that we're now being told, be careful, don't speak ill of the dead. No offense, by the way, to Michael Cox at the beginning of my stream. I didn't mean to blast him specifically. I do understand the common sentiment from people. They're always cautious about that. And they're always cautious in saying, don't speak ill of the dead. Why speak ill of the dead? Be careful about that, etc. But here's the deal. Speaking ill of the dead is a necessary function of life because it ultimately reminds us that we are all leaving behind a legacy, to some people at least. if you're a name of notoriety, you're subjecting yourself much more widely to public criticism and sentiment. So when you die, yes, people are going to weigh in on their opinions. Lindsey Graham was a scumbag, and it is actually our duty to ensure that in the history books going forward in America, that he serves as a reminder to all of us of what not to be as a senator and especially as a conservative. That's just the truth here. But the irony, back to the irony in all of this, is Trump supported this. And Trump still chose despite this, despite the fact that Lindsey Graham turned his back on Trump after January 6th, despite the fact that Lindsey Graham didn't support Trump at all and tried to demonize him in 2016 on CNN during the presidential campaign trail, originally, when Trump was actually running on great things that were actually anti-establishment and anti-neoconservatism and anti-war, etc., anti-big donor money, anti-APAC, essentially. You know, despite all of that, Trump still chose to endorse Lindsey Graham over Mark Lynch, the America First candidate this year. And really, going as far as celebrating when Lindsey Graham won the primary too, all over Truth Social, he's telling me, you gotta vote for Lindsey. He's such a hard worker and a great senator to South Carolina. I mean, he talks about South Carolina twice a year, and every other day he talks about Ukraine and sprinkles in a little bit of Israel worship, and it's just so perfect, honestly. You gotta vote for Lindsey Graham. And then he wins. Oh boy, Lindsey Graham won. I just love it. I love it. We're gonna play golf all day, and we're gonna talk about what we can do to serve Israel more. Thank you for keeping his seats, South Carolinians. You chose well. Wow. He may talk about you this year, but if not, rest assured he'll mention you guys at least once in 2027. That's the truth in all of this. And now, all of this beyond that is truly a reminder that in this period, this fourth turning that we're in, and that I reference all of the time, courtesy of Mark Mitchell, by the way, a guy you should follow on X, who's now on his own. He left Rasmussen. There's going to be a whole story there I'm going to do on that. But Mark Mitchell turned me on, the head pollster at one time for Rasmussen, turned me on to this fourth turning. Excellent book. You should read it. Recognize that we're in it, and it'll help you see the future the way that I do. And if you don't want to, then just like the stream and subscribe for more content, because I talk about it all the time as it is. And you should do that anyway to support the channel. It's free. But in this fourth turning, the messaging here is simple. Nothing can stop it. Nothing will stop God's new plan from rising up. Not Trump, not Lindsey Graham, not the neocons. Okay? That's actually where we draw a little bit of inspiration in the death of a neocon like Lindsey Graham. Because we watched that election. We watched Trump publicly endorse a neocon, warmonger, Israel and Ukraine, really. Ukraine first and Israel first, foreign wars advocate. And it was another example of Trump betraying his MAGA base based off of what we voted for, as opposed to what we're now getting from him. I called it out then, and I'm reminding you of that now. And that was frustrating to deal with. It's been frustrating to watch these events like Thomas Massie, an America First, actual principled candidate, be ousted from his seat as a result of millions of dollars of Jewish donor money replacing him with Ed Galrain. Ed Galrain, an even worse possible example of Lindsey Graham. We'll see, time will tell. It's been frustrating. So when this happens, it's even more cause to celebrate, and that's really why you're seeing the people jumping for joy, because this just takes the power away. It reminds this wicked administration and this disgusting elite establishment that's now ruling over America that actually no, God is in charge. You may think you're in charge because you are tasked with making day-to-day decisions that influence all of us, and you may get your rocks off on this idea that even the will of the people no longer can make all of the decisions like our country was set up and intended for, and these people may think that they have some say in all of this. But no, actually. Lindsey Graham's death date, biblically, was signed before he was even born. And all of this is unfolding in accordance with God's will and plans. And that's that's perhaps what is the most amazing about all of this is they thought that they pulled it off this year. They thought that they got Lindsey Graham back in over Mark Lynch. Thank God that America First Mark Lynch guy didn't get the Senate seat. What a disaster that would have been. A Republican who actually wants to put America first, that means he would have voted against this Iran war in the Senate and defied Trump. Thank God we have Lindsey Graham in. No doubt this is what they were telling themselves. And now he's dead. He's gone. The boomers in general, this is a reminder that the boomers in general are always destined to age out of the system. They're gone. They're aging out of the system now. And over the course of the next 6, 8, 10, and 12 years, this will start to happen more frequently. The boomers who destroyed the old ways establishments, all of the traditionalism that made this country great, the nuclear family, the nuclear family, and they took the great economy and destroyed it in the name of greed, and they worshipped Israel, and they loved foreign wars, right? They drag raced on our economy for their own gain at our expense. And they set up this new establishment now that corrupts and plagues our political system with nothing good comes from it. It is all against us now. And these boomers who did this, especially, and I'm talking especially about the politicians, they are dying off, finally. They're aging out of the system, and with this notion, you recognize then that also means that their establishment that they set up is dissolving. That is all happening right now. But here's another reality check for you, because while we can momentarily recognize that and get all giddy about it, and we can do our little LARPing live action role play about how we're going to rise up now and take their place and restore this nation to glory, as much as I want that to be true, and as much as I believe in the possibility of that being the reality of America's future, and I am doing my part, or the best that I can right now, to work towards that, there is a reality check here. And that is that everyone is celebrating Lindsey Graham no longer being a burden to the Republican Party. But you have to recognize this. The establishment as it stands currently, though it may be dissolving, still has way too much control over everything. And this is really the biggest problem here. Because here's the deal here. What we're seeing as a result of Lindsey Graham dying suddenly is we have now begun to see a narrative. I've seen it on my Twitter, on X. There's this narrative that's already been crafted beyond the conspiracies. That's happening too. I just already, in my opinion, hopefully shattered the idea that Russia killed Lindsey. Please, if you're on this channel, please look into it more and recognize that people just die, okay? First and foremost. But the actual narrative that is highlighting the new plan of the establishment going forward, the actual rhetoric emerging, is coming out in copy-paste form, which is how I know it's the new paid-for establishment narrative. And it's these GOP establishment shills and commentators and pundits on X posting virtually the same messaging about Nikki Haley. That's now the new Lindsey Graham, basically. And they're posting the same kind of stuff, and they're saying, well, I really don't like that Nikki Haley stood up against Trump. And I don't like that she was so critical back then. But if you really think about it, now that, sadly so, and God rest his soul, Lindsey Graham is gone, Nikki Haley really would be like the best replacement for Lindsey Graham, don't you think? I've seen this like 5 times already today. And that tells me that the establishment is paying these people to say that. So therefore, that's the new establishment narrative and rhetoric being pushed out. Nikki Haley should take Lindsey Graham's seat in Senate. Here's the deal with that. Nikki Haley is a massive hawk for Ukraine, just like Lindsey Graham was. She will literally be Lindsey Graham in 3-inch high heels. Perhaps even the same high heels that Lindsey Graham may or may not have worn in the privacy of his own home in Washington, D.C. She'll be Lindsey Graham in heels, and she pushes for more aid to Ukraine. In addition to that, she pushes all of the Israel worship. She loves the idea of supporting Israel still, unquestionably so. She wants the Ukraine war to continue going on against Russia. And worse yet, I don't care how this sounds, I've already done a video on it. She's now a woman who's rising up to take another position of power. And if you've been following me on this channel for any length of time, you know my stance on that. Women do not belong in politics. They don't belong in positions of leadership. And every time they obtain these positions, especially to a large degree, it is a sign of a biblical curse from God on a nation. There's no examples throughout history, really, of a woman in power with a nation that emerges better off for it. They are always a sign of a nation's decline, an empire's decline, a kingdom's decline. Always. Cleopatra, we have the Bible, we have Jezebel, we have Jezebel's wicked daughter, who is even worse. And the Bible itself is actually very clear in Isaiah chapter 12, verse 3, that women will rule over you, and your leaders, who are women, will cause you to err. So that's even worse. But all of it's bad, because she's just going to be female Lindsey Graham. So she has no redemptions. There's nothing redeeming about Nikki Haley. She's annoying, she's stupid, and she supports Israel and the aid to Israel, unquestionably, and she supports aid to Ukraine. So that's what they're asking for. And the fact that there are so many commentators out there pushing for this tells you that it's an establishment push by the wicked, corrupt, neoconservative establishment. Oh, let's get, I mean, I know Nikki Haley, a lot of people, she rubbed a lot of people the wrong way when she criticized Trump, but really think about it. She might actually be the most suitable replacement for Lindsey Graham. This tells you that we are still facing a massive uphill battle if you actually care about America, if you're actually America first, if you're an actual young conservative who recognizes that you can't possibly be liberal as a young man. You just, nowadays, if your testosterone is at least where it's supposed to be or higher, you cannot be a young man in America and a liberal. It's not possible. And so we recognize that the Conservative Party, in theory, is our party. It's the party for us, especially if you're white, but also really if you're smart enough to recognize it, if you're black as well. And in this case, too, I would even say some Hispanics, too, should recognize this, and I think they do. Not to go off on a side tangent here, but I actually think the Democrats recognize that the Hispanics recognize this, because the Democrats don't even really cater to the Hispanics anymore. They're pushing for Somalians and Muslims and all these other third world countries to come in now, because they almost recognize, they're wait, you mean to tell us that 10 years later, after we welcomed all these Mexicans in, that they actually are Catholics that believe in a patriarchy, and so they actually may vote for us at first for the benefits, but then they actually get annoyed with us and start voting Republican? Oh, fuck that. We need to start letting people in from India and the Middle East then, and Somalia. And so understand that white men, black men, and Hispanic men are becoming more conservative because they see the writing on the wall. And especially white men. White men have pretty much always been conservative. So we recognize that the Conservative Party by default then is truthfully the vessel that we need to take control of in order to save America. And the establishment doesn't want that to happen, despite the fact, like I just explained, that establishment's dissolving. And the boomers that run it are dying out. They're aging out of existence. But just like in The Fourth Turning, which again, you gotta read it, they are desperately holding on. And every time they squeeze harder, more sand. It's like holding on to sand. It slips out of their fingers, but it doesn't change the fact that they're just desperate to hold on to as much as they can for as long as possible. This is the ultimate sign of The Fourth Turning, too. And that's what they're doing now. And that's why they're pushing so hard and so fast for Nikki Haley. And it's a sign to us that the establishment still has a lot of power. This death, though it's exciting, and it's a sign of possibly good things to come, maybe, depending on how much we're able to take control of it and seize the opening window that's literally opening more seemingly every year now for us, we still have a huge uphill battle. And we can't take it for granted, and we can't rest on our laurels, and we really can't look at this as a win. This is not a win. This is just a sign that an opportunity is approaching us soon. So recognize that. And here's the other thing. We're seeing kind of the same strategy also playing out with Mitch McConnell, which leads me to this too. Because this is the update on Mitch McConnell now, which coincidentally gets released after Lindsey Graham is announced as dead. Do you think that's a... See, people want to say, oh, isn't that a coincidence? Lindsey Graham was in the Ukraine drone factory 48 hours ago. Russia destroyed it, and now he's dead. I think Russia killed Lindsey Graham with this heart attack gun with a slow-release poison. I know it's fascinating. I've read the CIA stuff. It is interesting. It is sinister. Lindsey Graham died of normal causes as far as I'm concerned, unless proven otherwise. Here's the real coincidence. You want the real suspicious coincidence? Mitch McConnell, who nobody has seen or heard from in over a month, who was found passed out in his house for 5 hours and had to be resuscitated, now all of a sudden posts a picture for proof of life with today's newspaper. I don't know if you can see that. Today's newspaper in his lap in the hospital bed with his Chinese, possibly spy wife, Elaine Chao, back home from China. She wouldn't go back home. She left 3 days after Mitch McConnell was rushed to the hospital and said, "Oh, his condition doesn't warrant me going back home to tend to him." Now she's back home, though. She's issuing statements. He's issuing statements. The photo's now out there. The governor of Kentucky's demanding the proof of life. And now that Lindsey Graham, another senator, is actually dead, and the GOP can't possibly hide it. Now all of a sudden, oh, look at that, Mitch McConnell. He's up. He's doing well. Look at that smile. He's making a recovery, actually. This was actually what was posted, too. This is the statement from Senator Mitch McConnell. This is from the C-SPAN page. It says, U.S. Senator Mitch McConnell released the following note to constituents regarding his hospitalization and recovery. It says, to my fellow Kentuckians, when you elected me to a 7th term and made me our Commonwealth's longest-serving senator, you did so trusting that I'd keep showing up to fight for you every day. And over the past several weeks, Elaine and I have appreciated... Elaine and I was forwarding your messaging to her while she was in China talking with CCP leaders. Elaine and I have appreciated both your well wishes and your honest questions about what was keeping me away from the Senate. You know, the only job that I have that you voted for me to be a part of. You all know how folks of my generation, oh, here we go, often hesitate to share the vulnerability that comes with growing older. Even in the public eye, I feel that same instinct. I can't help it. But at the same time, I have had more than my fair share of experience with physical vulnerabilities. Surviving childhood polio meant spending my entire life with mobility challenges. They haven't even exactly gotten easier to manage with age. And last month, I took a fall which landed me in the hospital. My doctors have confirmed that I didn't break any bones or suffer a concussion. I didn't have a heart attack or a stroke. I don't have any tumors or hemorrhages, but I was briefly unconscious, and was taken to the hospital. While receiving excellent care over the past several weeks, I've also had to deal with a mild case of pneumonia. I can assure you that I've been a good patient. At my age, I tend to do what my doctors tell me to do. I've submitted to every test they can think of to help figure out what caused this incident, and I'm continuing to do everything they asked to speed my recovery. In fact, with signs of continued progress, I've been able to move from hospital care to a rehabilitation center where I'll keep regaining my strength. As much as it frustrates me, this process takes time, and on the advice of my doctors, I won't be able to return to the Senate floor to vote quite yet. But rest assured, in the meantime, I'm not taking a break from the Senate business that matters to you. I've been working closely with my legislative staff on current issues, and with my Kentucky team who helped me provide timely constituent services across our Commonwealth. I've also been keeping in touch with my Senate colleagues on the appropriations process, midterm elections, and everything in between. You're right to expect your representatives to work hard for you, and part of my decision to retire at the end of my term, this coming January, was being honest about the demands of Senate work. But I still have unfinished business to complete on your behalf, and I have every intention of finishing the job you elected me to do. I'll keep working hard to get back on the Senate floor as soon as possible, and I'll keep you posted on the progress of my recovery. Until then, I'm so grateful for your prayers and well wishes. From the Office of the Attending Physician. So, that's the statement now from Mitch McConnell. They're kind of doing the same thing, though. And I've explained that in a prior stream because the fact of the matter is, whether or not this photo is credible, and I have some doubts. I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist on it. To me, it actually looks at least somewhat real, for the most part. It's semi-believable, at least. The fact remains that, first of all, and I'll say this before anything else. First of all, this Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham are both stark reminders to us at their advanced ages that there needs to be blatant ageism, meaning we discriminate against elderly people. That's what I'm advocating for, yes, in our political system. When you look back to the founding fathers, as I've pointed out several times, their average age was between 28 and 44 years old. Those are the kind of men that you want leading your nation. I've also pointed out the weird irony in all of it. The border, it's almost hypocritical, really, in the fact that these 70 and 80-year-olds get to oversee policy and policy changes and legislation that directly affects American lives and really has long-lasting effects on American lives that they themselves won't really have to either entirely suffer through or at all suffer through, depending on how quick they go after signing it. Realize that Lindsey Graham there could have been a possible reality where Lindsey Graham had made some of the worst legislative decisions in his life in Congress and the Senate, and then died the next day, having never had to suffer through any of those decisions. That was a possibility. That's why it's a problem to have 70-year-olds and 80-year-olds serving in our political offices. It really needs to be 65 and under. If the expectation at least was 20 years ago that men could retire at 65, it should be the same for our politicians. I don't want somebody in office who's over 65 anymore. And this is why. This is a huge problem for the Conservative Party. Now, they can't go quick enough, these boomer cons, these neocons, China Mitch, Ukraine Lindsey, both worship Israel and war. Good riddance. You didn't conserve anything in our nation. You sucked. Your legacy sucks, and you'll be remembered as abysmal failures, both of them. But that being said, recognize what's happening here, just like with Lindsey Graham and how now the neocons and the establishment are still pushing to maintain control of power in the form of Nikki Haley, who's a lot younger, and would be Lindsey Graham in high heels and pushing for all of the same stuff so that they can keep their control. We're seeing the same strategy unfold with Mitch, as I've explained in the prior stream when this news was happening. Mitch McConnell should be done already. He can't vote in the Senate right now. He's actually useless. He is actually useless to us. He's useless right now to Kentuckians, and he's useless to the Republican Party as a whole in this state. And while he's admirably recognizing that and retiring now, but not until January, truthfully, he should have retired 20 years ago. We shouldn't even know who this guy is. Gen Z shouldn't even really know his name, except maybe briefly being mentioned about some sort of policy in the 90s. That's the actual truth in all of this. And it's a massive burden on everybody. Additionally, the strategy with Mitch McConnell is, at the very least, if there can't be any proof that he's like completely unable to serve as a senator, and it hits August 4th. The deadline is August 3rd, as I explained in the last video. Before we saw this photo, which I have maybe some slight doubts on the authenticity of. But before we saw this photo, the question seriously was, is he brain dead? Did he die already and they're just keeping him on life support to justify holding his seat until after August 3rd? Because August 3rd is the deadline where the governor can force a special election to occur in Kentucky. And if a special election, as I've explained in Kentucky, occurs, well, heaven forbid, for the establishment's sake, that gives we the people, or at least those of us from Kentucky, the actual power to choose the replacement outright. And that's their biggest fear. Their biggest fear isn't even really Democrats taking Mitch McConnell's seat, believe it or not. Their biggest fear is that the guy they just spent so much money on replacing up there in Kentucky District 4 or 5, I think it was, Thomas Massie, who's still very popular with Kentuckians, their biggest fear is that Thomas Massie rises like a phoenix, takes the Senate seat because he is still popular with Kentuckians, and then gets essentially a promotion as a result of their actions in the past, buying his seat out with massive, corrupt, filthy, Zionist, pig, Jewish donor money to replace him with Ed Galrain, a man who ran on literally drafting the boomers' grandchildren, the boomers who voted for Ed. Ed Galrain's promise was, I'll draft your children to war for Israel. We got to prepare the young people to go fight and die in World War III. And the boomers said, well, that settles it. My goodness. Man, that settles it right there. I want my grandkids to go fight and die for Israel. That way they can stop complaining about the shit economy we handed them. So that's their biggest fear. And that's why this is now happening the day after, or really the day of. Because when was this posted? Yeah, okay, okay, this was posted at 5:37 p.m. Uh, okay. Yeah, so this was posted today at 5:37 p.m., July 12th. So yeah, this gets posted coincidentally hours after Lindsey Graham's death, literally 12 hours or 15 hours after it's announced that Lindsey Graham has died. Now the Republican, Mitch McConnell's alive. Rest assured. No need to replace his Senate seat immediately with a special election that would allow the people to vote on that. And why, by the way, as I've explained in a prior episode, the reason why they don't want that is because if they allow him to retire in January, then they basically get to go through a normal midterm election. They want the normal process to occur for the election so that they have all of the time and resources and money available to prop up the establishment options and force you to pick from those. A special election would allow the people way too much control, and they can't have it. And that's ultimately, again, it brings me back to the point in all of this that the reminder here is that God is dealing with boomer scum neocons right now. And he's dealing with them through natural causes. Their time is running out. They are, like I said, aging out of politics, quite literally aging out of existence. And like I explained, with that, the establishment that they build that doesn't serve us and actually harms us, their children and grandchildren, is dissolving before their very eyes. It's delightful, and it's worth celebrating it, but only in recognition of the other reality that, like I explained, we have a massive uphill battle for reasons like Mitch McConnell and how they're playing the game, for reasons like Lindsey Graham and how they're playing the game. They want Nikki Haley to replace Lindsey Graham, and they're going to find somebody to replace Mitch McConnell that will also continue on with Mitch McConnell's legacy. So here's what we have to recognize. With their deaths does come the opportunity for this obvious curse associated with the boomers. Many curses from God are tied with generations, by the way. And I do believe in this case it's tied with the boomers, and God will give us a chance to repent and ask for forgiveness as a nation, where we can then lift the curse and solve the problems by dishing out appropriate consequences, turning back to God, and taking power in our government. And that's what I was really reminded of. I was reminded of a really simple fact today while I was engaging with somebody in the comments on my video about how Mark Levin is actually the one dividing the Republican Party, despite the fact that Mark Levin says it's the woke right dividing it. I highly recommend checking out that video. But somebody left a comment down below on it, and he said, dude, I was jiving with you so well. You speak so much truth. But then at the end, you talk about voting. Do you really think you can vote your way out of this? My reply, of course, was yes, actually. But that people are missing the forest through the trees on that. Yes, in theory, we can vote our way out of it. I believe that we still alter the course of American decisions and reality through our voting. I do believe that. I think the window on that could be closing if we're not careful, though. But I do believe voting matters. But the picture is way bigger than that. And what I try to paint on this channel goes way beyond voting for the President of the United States. Because as we've now seen with Donald Trump, many people are blackpilled on voting because of how Donald Trump betrayed MAGA. And in that instance, you almost have to then hand it to him and say, well, how much did the voting matter when it came to Trump? Now it's just a slower version of Democrats. It's a managed decline. But my reply to this commenter also brought up what I was reminded of today when it comes to this topic called regime change. And really, I thought it was appropriate to compare it to regime change because that is what millennials and Gen Z and probably Gen Alpha as they get older too will be seeking to do, non-violently, of course. It really is about regime change if you think about it. And really the window of opportunity is opening for us to do that now as these guys die off. They're not dying from assassinations, and we're not out in the streets as reactionaries and conservative young men committing political violence to achieve any of this because we don't need to. Their time is up. It's over with. And that's for the best. We don't want the country to descend into civil war where we are then internally destroying ourselves and opening us up for more subjugation or making us weaker on the national level. But where we have the opportunities is they're dying, we can replace them. But only if we actually rise up and do it. And regime change, good regime change, in the words of Charlie Kirk, the late great Charlie Kirk, who I mostly didn't agree with, but socially agreed with him on a lot when he talked about Christianity and female dynamics and regime change in Iran, because yes, Charlie was smarter than Trump was on that for sure. And in the words of Charlie Kirk, regime change is great, but it must come from the ground up. There is no such thing as top-down regime change, which is why we have learned that in two ways already. We've learned that through watching Trump try it with Iran and fail, because we tried top-down regime change and expected the people to rise up, and they didn't. And there's more lessons in that saying too, and saying it that way as well. But we've learned it through watching Trump try this and fail and prosecute this meaningless, stupid war that has now embarrassed him and America. It's failed. The regime, the head was cut off, but it grew back. It's like a hydra. And we've learned it ourselves. If you're a conservative and you voted for Trump, you quite literally voted for regime change by voting for Trump. You saw what Biden did, and you said, I don't fuck with that at all. I don't like the gay-ass rainbow shit on the White House. I don't like the trans nonsense. The stupid face diapers and the COVID nonsense, which a lot of which started with Trump, by the way, and don't forget that either. But it was definitely enforced under Biden, and the increased cost of living and, you know, the support for Israel when they were doing what they were doing in Gaza, and the copious amounts of foreign aid to the Ukraine during Biden, the war that was started because of that fat mouth bitch Kamala Harris, the vice president at the time. We didn't have with any of that. And so we took our votes and voted for a new executive, effectively trying to execute on what I would compare to a top-down regime change. And it's failed. Trump has betrayed MAGA. He has sold us out for his own sake, basically. And he is now serving Israel, Zionism, and in some cases, all of the foreign wars and the globalist agenda, really. I mean, he's buckled down on the border. Whoop-de-doo. So recognize this. And this is where we actually have to hone in on what voting actually should be, and beyond voting, what we actually really need to do. Because I still think, like I said, voting matters. But if we really want to change America, then perhaps the people who, in chud-like manners, say, well, you can't vote your way out of it, perhaps they have a point that we should lean into as well. While we should and absolutely will need to continue voting for the best possible candidates. And if there are none, then we allow the Republican Party to burn internally, metaphorically speaking, until good candidates rise up. Perhaps therein lies another answer, that beyond voting, it needs to be ourselves who put ourselves on the line. We rise up and we take control. Believe it or not, that is an option. And I advocate for that all the time when I say good people need to rise up and run for local offices. And why is it local offices? Because I'm aware that most people are not coming out of college with any form of political science experience or sort of a law degree. The vast majority of Americans are just good people who work hard at their jobs, but would consider themselves to be unworthy of running for local office. And I'm here to tell you that's not true. I'm actually here to tell you that running for local office is easier than you think, and winning those local offices might be even easier than you think as well. Take matters into your own hands. Where do you start is the question. And it starts first of all, it starts with you just getting involved in the political scene. Start showing up to your town meetings, the town hall meetings. Show up, network, meet people, introduce yourself. Yes, you're going to have to deal with a bunch of flaming liberals probably, and you're going to have to deal with a bunch of wackos, but there are good people there. And if you show up, you're adding one more good body to it. Network with the other good people. Meet people. Every town has both parties involved. Meet the people that you agree with, network with them, make connections, and see if there's already good candidates trying to run for office. And if you can support 80% of what they're running and standing for or more, put your own money behind them then. Because at the local level, it's not like you have to donate thousands of dollars. If you're in a small town, you hand them $50 and they're grateful. It goes a long way. Offer to collect signatures for them if they need to. Put in a little sweat equity. You live on your street, go up and down your street on both sides, go around the block and get signatures. Put some lawn signs up. Print out lawn signs if you can. It really is this simple. People don't realize this. It really is this simple to start. And this is how you start. And through networking, you yourself can find yourself in a position then where you decide you want to run for something. You become aware of openings. So beyond finding good candidates to support, which is easy to do really, And beyond building a community and starting to network and working your way up, if you already just want to dive right into it, or if you've already accomplished this or decide to accomplish this and then want to work your way into being the politician yourself, then you want to go into the next thing, the next step, which is run for the offices, run for the positions. Where do you start? School board. Here's where you start. Start with school board. This is like a golden ticket. It's easy to get into. It's easy to get into and subsequently so important. If you want to understand one of the major root causes for why our society is the way that it is now and why people aren't nationalistic, they're not educated, they're not Christian, they're not proud of America, they're being taught all this bullshit, they have the woke crap in their schools, they have disgusting transgenders showing up and reading pornographic material to children, well, school board actually makes a lot of these decisions, and it's very easy to run for. It controls what kids are taught. It controls the budget for the schooling. It controls teachers' hires. Many teachers are problematic. And it has a huge impact while being very low cost to run for. Very low cost. You get a couple hundred signatures in your town and you're on the board. And you get a couple $1,000s at most in donations from your entire town and you're in. And you're halfway charismatic, you have a decent smile, you dress nice, you smell good, you look decent. You're approachable and friendly. Boom. There you go. Beyond that, there's other options too. Town and city councils that handles these positions, by the way, handle your local taxes, zoning laws, town ordinances, and basic services. Gets a lot of experience under your belt, gives you a little bit more control over the town stuff beyond the school board, gives you a little bit of control over the town stuff, adds experience to your name, gets your name out there more. Also easy to get onto and acquire, by the way. Not hard. Believe it or not hard. Beyond that, depending on the size of your town, the village trustee, or what would be called the alderman, is very similar. Same deal, just for smaller towns, depending on the size and scale of where you live. But that's where you start, literally. That is like entry-level stuff. It's basically the equivalent of getting a job at McDonald's. I kid you not. So many people think that this stuff is beyond them or they're not equipped for it. And it's just not true. Now, subsequently, if you're on the other side of this and you think, well, I don't want to sacrifice for that, well, fuck you. Here's the other thing with the boomers that we need to discuss as well. The boomers were greedy, entitled, and the most selfish generation perhaps to have ever existed in America. They're tired, they're old, you talk with them, they don't want to know the truth, and they get mad at you for telling them the truth. They want to live in their fantasy worlds, and they want to die before it all goes to shit. They're cowards, they're useless to us, and they are anything but the actual model to live by. They should be spending their last dying days fighting for us, for their children and their grandchildren. They should actually wake up and recognize how bad it is and what they're leaving behind, and they should take a stand against it. But they won't. They want to live in comfort and die in comfort. They believe they're entitled to that. And really, it's upon us then, as Gen Xers, if you subscribe to this, Gen Xers are a mixed bag. Millennials, which most of whom will subscribe to this, some won't. Some millennials are truly the boomers' children, and they're also just as pathetic and retarded and gay. But many, many more millennials will resonate with what I'm saying here, and they'll recognize the need to pledge themselves to fixing these problems. And even more Gen Zers. I'm telling you, I have so much faith in the Gen Z generation. Probably because in the millennial end of the spectrum, I am on the youngest end. So in many ways, I actually relate to Gen Z more because I'm only a few years older than the oldest Gen Zers. And I always really have. When I see Gen Zers talking a certain way, saying certain things, I'm like, I've always thought that way. I've never resonated with the 41-year-old millennial gay husband types. They got 5 daughters and a wife that they cuck to, and, oh, let me see if my wife will let me get on Call of Duty tonight. Never been that way. It's pathetic. Gen Z is a whole different animal, and they give me a lot of hope. And Gen Alpha's coming up, and they may wind up even being more savage than Gen Z. So this message will resonate the younger that you are, but truthfully, you have to remember the boomers are no example for us to live by. They're the worst. We should be the opposite. They were greedy. We should be selfless. They are entitled. We should recognize that it's not about us, and we should be setting up for future generations. And so if you're on the other end of the camp and you're saying, well, I don't want to run for office, I don't like that. I'm not comfortable with that. I just want to live a quiet life. Well, then fuck you. Because recognize what this actually is. We're not living in such times where you're afforded that privilege anymore. And you can cry foul all you want about it and say, but the boomers got to do it and it's not fair. The whole point of life is not to be fair. The whole point of life is to live and to learn and to experience what God has in store for you and what He's set up for you. Not every generation gets it easy. Millennials won't have it easy, and we probably never will. We're going to have to spend our lives selflessly fixing what the boomers ruined, and we may get to live long enough to see it restored and benefit off of that towards the end of our lives. This is reality. And Gen Z, by the way, it could be the same kind of reality for them, and I think they're better at recognizing that, which is why I like their generation so much. But that is what you have to recognize. You have to spend your life fixing your nation. It's not about you, and it's not about when you're comfortable. When the world is going to shit, when your country is falling apart, it is your civic duty to do something about it. And you're a coward if you won't. You're a coward and a pussy, like all of the boomer men in existence who cucked to their wives and waited around their entire life for permission to take action, never actually getting it, and therefore never actually doing anything with their lives, other than working their suck-ass job for 40 years and now retiring and learning that life actually has no meaning if you don't subscribe to a higher one. You know, all of those things they discarded, like religion and Christianity and church. So that's the other part of that. Either you're a coward and you're selfish and you just don't want to run and make yourself uncomfortable, or you're more of the Moses type and you have a bit of a stutter and you think, God, surely you can't be talking about me, God. I am not qualified. And then you have to remember that it's not about being qualified to get called by God. It's about getting called by God, and He qualifies you along the way. So that's what we're dealing with first of all. And whichever side of the encampment you fall on, shake it off and start doing something about it. Even if it's not going to be your name on the ballot, find good candidates then. You have no excuse. Because even if you can't shake it off and you say, I just can't do it, I'm not qualified, or I want to live comfortably. Okay, fine. Fuck you either way. But find somebody else then who's willing to be selfless and support them, honestly. I mean, really, are we this lazy? Are we this helpless as a society? Are we this fucking pathetic as an American nation when just 250 years ago our founding fathers rose up with muskets against an entire empire and gained independence from them? You mean to tell me that's how far we've fallen? That you just want to spend your days eating In-N-Out Burger and getting fatter, you fat cuck little bitch, and you want to sit down in your chair and bitch and moan all day on the internet about what the politicians are doing, but you can't find it in your heart or in your soul, or you have no fighting spirit left in your bones to actually rise up and do something physical that matters? It's actually pathetic. And with that out of the way, I want to remind you, it starts at that local level, like I said, which is really why people have even less of an excuse. School board, town council, village trustee. It's not hard. Now, beyond that, if you succeed in these, recognize that that's where you build a resume and you can work your way up. And you work your way up to positions like county commission. This controls the county budget, the roads that we complain about. Wouldn't it be nice to have good people there? We're looking at county council. That's a huge step up. It's a big one. It's the main legislative body for your county. It handles the budget for your county, the taxes, all of the zoning for the county, all of the roads, big policy decisions. That's a huge one. County council, by the way, is like the step up from town council. It's like the ultimate promotion, and it's a direct upgrade from it. There's also county sheriff, if you're sick of soft on crime policies. Especially if you have a law background, if you're an officer, county sheriff, good place to change that. There's county treasurer, you're handling the county's money, you're dealing with property taxes. It's a dry position. It's more of the accountant type position. But God has all different kinds of people and personalities. There's the accountant types, there's the law and order types, there's the charismatic salesman types, and all of us belong in politics. If you're charismatic, go for town council. If you're rigid law and order and discipline, go for county sheriff. If you're the accountant, brainiac, mathematic type, go for county treasurer. And work your way up to them by starting at the town level, okay? It is this easy. There's other positions like clerk of court and registrar of deeds and probate judges. There's all kinds of opportunities out there, I promise you. And beyond that, there's the obvious ones like mayor, and then who he appoints as a deputy mayor, too. Maybe you network enough to be appointed as a deputy mayor one day and you get your name out there and you take the spot after him as mayor. This is how this works. And in some cases, if you're in a smaller county, if you're in a nice rural area with a smaller county, mayor can actually be a lot easier to get a hold of than council positions. So it really does depend on where you're at, and you learn this as you go. But in bigger cities, obviously, if you're like New York City for mayor, for instance, that's like a celebrity status, and that's very hard to obtain. So it really does depend. And then, of course, from there, after the county level, you get your name out there, and then you pursue the state stuff. State House, State Senate, State Supreme Court even, depending on what you're specializing in, and off you go. And this is what launches political careers, and this is really how it works, and it's not hard. It's actually easy. But we must do this. It's not an option to just live a quiet life anymore. And like I said, regime change starts from the ground up. Think about it like this. You want to complain about your senators like we did all stream long tonight about how Lindsey Graham never represented South Carolina, chose to focus on Ukraine and Israel instead. You want to complain about the Mitch McConnells who are China Mitch and everything else, another senator. You want to complain about what's happening in Congress, in the House of Representatives when it comes to Thomas Massey being bought out. Well, recognize that really their power dwindles significantly so if that's all happening, but the majority of us are slowly working our way up into breaching those positions, and we already have all of these other smaller positions. If the House of Representatives is doing what they do and the Senate's doing what they do, but at the statewide level it's filled with us infiltrating it and we're taking these positions, they're losing power. You want to complain about data centers being built, then recognize that data centers are being built and they can be stopped at county and state levels. And it would be so much easier for them to be stopped if we had that control. That's just one example. But that's it. And that's the messaging for tonight. Yes, it's good that Lindsey Graham is gone. Yes, it's good that Mitch McConnell's about to be gone. The neocon filth is dying. The boomers are losing power and aging out of existence. And the window of opportunity is opening. But make no mistake about it, it's opening and we need to be willing to seize the moment. Because if we don't, it will shut again and the elites will wind up building the new first establishment, first turning establishment in its place rather than us. So it is not a guarantee. Lindsey Graham's death, Mitch McConnell's coming retirement or death depending, is not a guarantee of the system and establishment shifting in our favor. It's just an opportunity being presented to us now and will continue to be presented to us for the next 8 and 10 and 12 years that we must grab a hold of and seize the moment and take control of. Because if we sit idly by, the opportunity will also pass us by and everything will actually be even worse than it was under these guys. And that's all I've got to say about that. Be sure to like the stream if you haven't already. Double tap your phone screens, hit the thumbs up button. It's free to do. And of course, subscribe to American Advocates for more content like this. I go live every single night, Sunday through Friday, and Saturdays too. I'll also take a look at chats, and I know I missed a super chat or two. I'm going to try and scroll up and see those because I was just on a roll. I usually stop everything for them, but like I really needed to get that messaging out. It's been on my chest for a while, and it just had to be talked about here. So, Michael Cox 6654 with the $2 super chat tariff, one of my best supporters. And I wasn't grilling you earlier, by the way. I know I can respect where you're coming from on the don't speak ill of the dead thing. So I obviously disagree with you on it to a degree, but I'm not grilling you at all. You're a great viewer and supporter, and I really do appreciate it. And I always appreciate the super chats. Usually you don't even say anything in them, but this time he did say something. And he said, best both sides of the aisle free speech. Awesome. And I appreciate the $2 super chat. Thank you as always, Michael Cox. You're a great supporter, seriously. And then we had another one. I saw it come in. There it is. Beck Fan with another $5 super chat. That's your second one, and I really appreciate that too. Beck Fan, a founding member on this channel. $5 super chat tariff, and he says, if you invested $1,000 in the Trump meme coin at its high, you would have $22 today. $22.61 today. Literally rug pulled his own supporters, yet they support him. And they shouldn't. And Trump has enriched himself in office, and he has betrayed MAGA overall. And it goes back to what I was saying, where it's not top-down regime change is getting harder. And it's not about violent regime change. It's just about the reality that voting for a president is important, but it comes with the recognition that voting for a president, while it's important, has a lot of hurdles with it. And we're seeing that play out with somebody who really, truly, I think, ran and started off at least as a true anti-establishment candidate, and now over the course of a decade has been completely corrupted and captivated by it. He's captured by them, and he's powerless to stop any of it. And that's the reality check for us. And I was going hard on boomers, but we got cool boomers in the chat. When I go hard on boomers, I speak about predominantly the boomers that have been in power, first of all. Secondly, I speak generally in the terms of generations. So I always emphasize that because we have Howard and we have Selena Girl and we have my member Diane. Howard's a member, and there are great ones out there, and they really do recognize this stuff, and they really are on board with us. And so individually, you will always find cool boomers, and it's never to disparage the individual boomer, but there's this generational component in society that always rears its ugly head. And so I always say this, it's like much like millennials 40 years from now will eat crow about Zohran Mamdani ruining New York City as mayor, as a democratic socialist. It's like, I didn't do that. That's not my fault. I don't even live there. And I wouldn't have voted for him even if I did. But it's like, in 40 years, I'll be old, and I'll be hearing about how, oh, you fucking millennials let Zohran Mamdani win. You ruined New York City. And it's just, it is what it is. Generations take responsibility for things that happen under their watch collectively. And that's why it's so important for us individually to do our part in society, so that we avoid more situations like that and instead actually try to restore our country to glory. Because if we do that, then generations are remembered well. We remember the World War II generation, rightfully so. No matter how you feel about the wars, what they stood for, what they meant, what they did, we do watch the films. We watch the Private Ryan films. We watch the documentaries. Grown men cry at those. And we recognize the dignity and the type of person that it took to be in that golden era, storming those beaches, in most cases dying at 20 years old to do so, and then coming back and digging ditches and laying bricks and building our country as well, and in doing so creating the best economy that the boomers saw and lived through and that America ever saw. And we recognize that golden era generation and we give them praise, and rightfully so. And so that's the alternative. Apex Say True says it was a wealth transfer, a back channel to funnel a fraction of his net worth into Saudi Arabia as an investment into real estate, headed up by his son-in-law. Yeah, Jared Kushner. Yep, that's true. Dave Wolf says Mitch is dead. That photo is AI. Google 10 dumbest states and 10 poorest states. Post your findings. I'm not saying, hey, you know what? I'm not even going to disagree with you for the sake of it, because I think I do disagree with you, but I can't 100% disagree with you, sadly. I think there is a weird possible cover-up happening right now with Mitch, and it is ridiculous, honestly. And one more reason to despise the current GOP and desire to infiltrate it and transform it and bend it to our will, which is what the young generations need to do. Oh, here we go. We got a real virtue signaler here. Jonathan Weiss. Ugh, the slurs describe you as much as those you despise. Everyone give a round of applause for Jonathan Weiss. That motherfucker in my chat. He is so virtuous. Never swears. What a great guy. Wow. You're a great guy. And your mom is proud of you. Good boy. David Cooper says, Apex, have you looked into the Board of Peace? Yeah, I know about that too. The GOP dinosaurs' extinction is coming. Yes, it is. That is true. Lindsey Graham's a reminder of that. The asteroid's hitting right now. Howard says, I have trained my Gen Z kids well. I know. You brag about that all the time, and it's great to hear. And I love that you've done that. Which God? Oh, Jesus Christ, of course. Christ is King, Christ is Lord. Scott says, look, retard, you really think you're the first person to figure this out? Oh, no, definitely not. I'm just the first person to talk about an actual solution for it. Unlike all of the other people who are into the outrage porn of sitting around in their sewing circles and discussing how the elites are holding us down and the establishment is corrupt and they're making our lives worse, I'm just here to tell you what you can actually do about it, like I just explained. It's all about community. First Timothy 2, prayer types for all of them, thankfully is God's will in Christ. Rose, you're a pussy, says Howard. What did she say? Rose Testa? With all due respect, you're so naive. Oh, really? Thanks for your constructive criticism. People like you are going to change the world, Rose. I can just feel it in my bones. You've got what it takes to change all of this, Rose. Thank you. Your parents made you like this? Did they now? What idiot are you? Call your... Wow, look at this little snowflake in here. You call your audience a pussy? Fuck you! That's great. That's awesome. I live to offend. Selena Girl says, we have met the enemy and he is us, is a famous quote from Walt Kelly's comic strip Pogo, often rendered as, we have seen the enemy and it is ourselves. Well, and that's mostly true. You know, I think back to Terminator? Terminator? I can't remember if it's Terminator 2 or 3. I think it's actually Terminator 3, and John Connor looks at Arnold and he goes, he looks at Arnold and he sees these two kids playing with their cowboys and Indians, bow and arrow and pistol, and they're fighting over something dumb. And John Connor looks back up at Arnold Schwarzenegger, the Terminator, who's good, and he says, we don't make it, do we? Humans, I mean. And Arnold goes, it's in your nature to destroy yourselves. It's in your nature to destroy yourselves. It is kind of true. Weak men from the easy times, says David. Yeah. I think you should figure out the generations before forming opinions about them. I have figured them out. That's why I have opinions on them. Thank you for your constructive criticism and tone policing, though, Missy Me. Listen, Missy Me, if I was looking for a tone policer, I would get married, because then at least I could fuck the tone policer. I really don't appreciate tone policing in my chat from a bimbo, all right? So please keep your opinions to yourself otherwise, all right? This is not the stream for you, all right? I have opinions that actually mean something because it's actually rooted in the truth. The last thing I need is for some little bitchy, catty female to come in here and say, well, you know, it's not what you're saying, but really it's about how you're saying it. And don't you think you should really become a little bit more empathetic and learn people? I have, actually. I have. That's why I do this. So thank you for your thoughts, but they mean nothing. Alex Hurt 4444. Gotta love this one. Here's another brain dead guy full of assumptions. Dude is talking about how we ain't doing shit and just complain all day while he's doing the same exact thing. Oh, you caught me. I don't do anything in my local community ever. You're completely right. Yeah. Yep. What a hypocrite I am. You caught me. You caught me. Oh, and then here's Rose. It's all fake, don't you see it? It's all just one big script in theater. They're all in on it. It's all of them against us, and they're all in on it. Great. Wow, you're real enlightened. What are you on today? Are you on the mushrooms today? Where'd you get such great information, Rose? Wow, I've never heard that before, Rose. It's all just, you mean to tell me it's all just a large play? It's all just a large theater script? And so you're telling me every country plays their part obediently so, and none of this info ever slips out to the common man? And every country just gets their script. Okay, Israel today, you're going to attack Lebanon. Lebanon, you're gonna just have to take the attack. Okay, people are gonna die. It's okay though, Lebanon, because what we're gonna do is there's gonna be this MOU. Iran, you're gonna demand the MOU, right? And Iran goes, yep, we got it. Okay, and then Iran goes, yeah, we'll just wait for Israel to attack Lebanon, and then we're going to draft the MOU script. And then the script writers, the Illuminati, they go, okay, perfect. And action. And then Israel attacks Lebanon, and Iran calls Trump, and they all pretend to play it out. Is that genuinely how you think the world operates, really? You really think that? And even at a domestic level, where I would argue on your behalf 10% so, and say, yes, a lot of our politics is theater, I would still say you're an absolute moron for subscribing to that overall. Preach Creek Media says, I was a city budget commissioner. Good for you. That's awesome, and it's nice to hear that. And we've had people stop in and chat and tell us. We had our the one guy, he was a huge super chat donor, and beyond the super chats, as I've explained, the biggest reward was just knowing there's people out there like him who's at the ground level right now. I think it was in Wisconsin or Minnesota, somewhere up there in the Great Lakes, and he's at the ground level doing it. Pushing for the Republican to be governor up there. Tom Tiffany is his name, by the way. I still remember it. So it's like, this is happening and people are doing this. We just need a lot more people to do it, which means you. It has to be you. You can't just hear this and go, I sure do hope other people rise up. Because if everybody thinks that way, which everybody is inclined to think that way, then not enough people rise up. It's going to take a massive force. Lifeguard says, I've just about had it with R7 plays. Yeah, you know what? I'm almost at a point where I can just confidently say we might need to start trimming some dead weight off of this channel. You know what I mean? Like, we don't really have time for tomfoolery. So give me some time to see it, Lifeguard. But yeah, we'll put R7 plays on notice here. I think I have seen some of his. I mean, I recognize the username, but I can't really piece together what he's added value wise. So. Another $2 super chat from Howard Clegg. Oh, he says, just cuz. Thank you, man. I appreciate that so much. And it really is nice. Here's the deal, too, Howard. I think within the next 2 or 3 weeks at the latest, I'm going to try and get it set up with you so we can have our chats. We can do if you can get on, I prefer to be on Discord. I want to set up a Discord for American advocates. Your Gen Z children can teach you how to get on there. It's very easy, honestly. But then I can record it easier. I can record it right from my computer, and we'll record a nice conversation, you and I, and it'll be like, millennial talks with Boomer, about politics and war. It'll be nice. We broke up there, shit. It'll be a good 30, 45 minutes, maybe 60 minutes if I can get the time for it, and we'll just have a nice talk. It'll be actually pretty cool. And I'm planning on trying to get that done within the next couple weeks. So stay tuned. Stay tuned for that, and thank you for the continued support. Seriously, I appreciate that. Most boomers are from the sexual revolution Hollywood era. Yes, they are, Michael Cox. Yep. That's why, by the way, abortion stems from them, feminism stems from them, sexual liberation, individualism. A lot of that all stems from the boomers because they worshipped all of that. And so when you look at it, it's basically like, well, if the boomers were taught to basically idolize and prioritize and worship pussy, then of course feminism gets ushered in very easily under that generation. Worship the woman, give the woman authority, etc. This is disastrous to society, but this is what happens. Consequently, if sexual liberation is the main theme, well, then you next have to remove the consequences that come with sex, which is pregnancy. Pregnancy is a lifelong responsibility, is what that turns into, because you're giving birth to a living being. So, why not just remove the child unnaturally from the uterus and avoid the consequences? Wow, wonderful. So yeah, and then it's like individualism is the ultimate finalization of that too, because, we see the result of that, declining birth rates and destroyed families and men who feel isolated and alone. And so, all of that happens with the boomers. And we give them grace because they were psyoped into this is what they were taught in their schooling system at a younger age. So it's not like they just woke up one day at 28, 29, 30 years old and said, the system sucks. They were taught to hate the system and change it when they were in their teen years. The education system was hijacked in the 1960s. Boomers were like teenagers then. So this was taught to them in high school or in middle school. And they went out into the world and they were the agents of it. So we do give them a little grace on this channel. It's not just 100% boomer hate with no empathy, sympathy, or pity. Pure Palm says, damn, I wish I would have been here a few minutes earlier to hear the what can you do advice. Just watch it back on the replay, Pure Palm. Good to see you back in the stream, too. Appreciate you being here. I'm starting to recognize your username more. Just watch it back on the replay when it ends. It's basically, in short, I'll give you the summary. It's we got to get involved. We've got to get involved. And I kind of lay down the avenues in which we can start to do that. I put a response to a chat on the video earlier today saying it is in humans' DNA to fight against the outside tribe. Wait a minute. Robbie Hall says, just to let you know, that newspaper that he's holding, you're talking about Mitch, obviously, here with the newspaper, was printed April 15th, 2026? No way. Hold on. On the spot, I'm going to look into that to see if that's true. Because I am suspicious of this photo. Newspaper. I had heard that the newspaper was like today's date or yesterday's date. April 15th, 2026. Oh, let me see. This will be brutal if that's true. Not to discredit anything here, but I'm actually using Grok to try to find it, and then I'm going to look at the source. You never trust Grok's word, but Grok will pull up all the sources from the internet on it. So Grok says no, it's not from April 15th. It says the photo released July 12th, 2026 shows McConnell holding that day's Washington Post sports section. The claims of April 15th, 2026 from a Wednesday come from unverified reverse searches in social media and don't match reporting. Let me see the sources Grok pulled up just to be... This is what you always have to do with Grok. Pull up the sources that Grok cites for you and check them. Because Grok is right probably, I'd say, 80% of the time. But there have been some major instances where Grok has been wrong, and I've always been grateful for checking those. So I'm gonna check in. I'm gonna look into that thoroughly. I'm doing that right now, but I'll take a look at a few more chats while that's happening. Not pectoral lifeguard, perictoral. His name was perictoral. Hey, CTG 2500. Good to see you in chat as well. He says, is it really realistic for a third party like Ross Perot started to emerge? No, actually, I don't think so, CTG. To be honest with you, I really don't. There's been rumors about Tucker Carlson starting this third party as well. And there's been called, Elon Musk had talked about it last year. Tucker Carlson's talking about it sort of this year. And people have talked about it before. And I don't think that's the right answer, CTG. I think, truthfully, the two-party establishment is set up and very hard to break, borderline impossible, and foolish because we've known historically that third parties almost always hurt Republicans. And at the end of the day, the Democrats despise white people and they despise American citizens in general, and they hate our country. And so we don't want to crush the GOP in that way. We want the establishment GOP destroyed so we can rise from its ashes and take control. But in doing so, we are then taking control of the conservative movement. So the vessels are already established. It's just a matter of us taking control of them, which is why I advocated earlier on what I did by saying we need to rise up and do this. And so it's there, it's established. It's just the establishment currently is evil. So we must become the establishment and be benevolent in doing so. And so it's already there, is my answer. And no, a third party is not realistic. First of all, third parties cost a fortune. So in and of itself, you need like billionaire backing to even create a third party, which is that already is the direct most limitation to that. But beyond that, even if you could back it with, say, Elon Musk or Tucker Carlson could get he's not rich enough actually, Tucker, but he could get the backing for sure for it. But it would just wind up harming Republicans. It would pull 3% support, which would force the GOP to lose, which might not even be a bad thing depending on who the GOP candidates are. But in the future, it would be a bad thing if we could actually get good candidates to rise up and be a part of the GOP. So that should be our goal. Our goal should be not not destroying the parties, but destroying most of the political establishment that exists within the parties and replacing it with ourselves. So, and that's my stance on that. How did I get into Mitch's bedroom? Well, I'm actually here as a follow-up to demonstrate proof of life. As you can see, though he hasn't moved at all in like the past hour, he does appear to be alive, and he is smiling, and he's holding a newspaper, and his Chinese wife is there behind me. So there you go, Mitch McConnell's alive. That settles it. Pure Palm says feminism has liberated women from the dignity of their natural sex and turned them into inferior men. Francis Parker Yaki, and that's true. Yes, that is true. Beck fan doesn't agree with me. He says the boomers chose it themselves. I mean, they still are responsible in that regard. We hold them accountable for a reason, and ultimately, yes, they did choose it. I'm not saying they didn't. What I'm saying is a young mind is easily susceptible to propaganda and to being psyoped, and that's what happened with the boomers. So we give them grace in that understanding. The same way we would give grace to any child that was abused for 15 years and then went out and committed some sort of, assault on somebody. We would say, well, throw that guy in prison. That's a violent crime. But people would find out the backstory, and we would have a degree of sympathy for it. And we would say, well, look at that. I mean, that's a brutal upbringing. It's kind of like that. It's not to exonerate them. It's just to explain what happened. So we do give grace while still holding it. Grace doesn't absolve. David Cooper says, I've got to say, it's always a great stream night after night. I've been on a roll recently, I feel like, and I appreciate hearing confirmations like that. As cocky as I pretend to be to piss off people I know who are hate watching, really, it's good to hear confirmation from actual other people who support me. That's what I take the most delight in. The hate makes me happy, but support from my regulars makes me thrilled and encourages me to keep going. So I appreciate that. CTG says boomers are basically sheep to their Zionist cultural masters, being directed into selfish greed and indoctrination as individualism. Yeah, exactly. Hey, not so private playlist. Good to see you in here. He says use the Google lens. I haven't even heard of that Google lens. I don't know what that is. Yeah, Grimy One. Yeah, I've seen Grimy One in here before. Grimy One says, this is definitely one of my new favorite streams. Thank you, man. That's another great chat right there, and I do appreciate that a lot, too. Yeah, keep coming by. It helps the show, certainly. Be sure to like the stream while you're here and subscribe, of course. Keep coming back. We love to have you in here. I saw you at the beginning of the show before I even went live, too, and I do appreciate that. So, and it's nice to build up a nice following of people because you guys really do help propel this channel, so... It's nice to know there are other people that think like I do out there, Mitch looks 15 years younger. Maybe it's just the hospital lighting. It's my nightcap at work. I agree with 99% of the topics. Thanks, Grimy. That's awesome, man. Selena says third parties are spoilers. The Green Party and Jill. Yeah, exactly. Facelifts are required to stay in office after 60, especially if you're a woman, right? Apex says the deep state is too entrenched. Any hope of true revival is delusional. I just don't agree. I just think it has to be a smart approach to achieve it, though. I think there's a lot of delusional people out there, and they envision this sort of situation where we rise up with our guns and stuff, and it's like, that's delusional. This whole... we'll take America back by force if needed. I think that's actually delusional, and I think for that reason, actually, we have to be aware, and we have to be smart in our strategy. And our strategy then must center around returning to community, and that means more than your family. That means community, building a community and networking locally, and breaching politics, starting at the local level, going to the county level, trying to progress to the state level, and then from there, working your way up. And if there's enough of us that do that, it is over for them. We take the country back. I do believe that. And you can. Some people want to. We have the people in here, the the gutless cowards, and they want to talk about how that's a hopeless endeavor, and I just don't believe that. And I don't believe that it's it's our calling to even be hopeless or pathetic. We should be fighting. We're advancing the kingdom of Christ. So we're called to be that way. We're called to have courage and hope and faith. And if you don't have those, your walk with Christ can't be good. The amount of resources and consideration dedicated to culturally engineering, distorting the boomer cannot be overstated. Yes, it's true, Pure Palm. I mean, the more you research it, the more you realize they really put a lot of chips on that. Like, it wasn't just like this like falling away that naturally occurred. It was deliberate. It was planned. It was executed at the time that they chose on purpose, and a fortune went into it. It's very true. Lifeguard says, it's a great stream. I'm not in uniform agreement, but I do give credit that you do a lot more homework than I do, so my mind is open. I can tell your mind's open, and it's nice. It's nice that you are that way. It's not only nice that you are that way, but honestly, Lifeguard, I feel like the more that I force you to moderate my chats the way that you do, the more you side with me, because it's almost like you have to deal with the scum in chat, and then I'm like, I'm not black pilling people, but I'm just kind of like clear pilling people, or doing my best to. So I feel like you've come around more, because you did kind of start off being a regular viewer in my chat, but you were, giving me pushback on a lot of my stuff, and it's different now. It's nice. It's nice, and you're a great moderator, so it's nice to have you in the chat regardless. You're good at moderating the chat. Oh, I saw the Waits Experience was in here too. I don't know if he's still in here, but nice to see you back, the Waits Experience, as always. Did I just say women over 60? Yeah, I did. Women over 60, they oftentimes want to get facelifts because they're literally aging, and women age poorly. Mitch looks like a crowning turtle, always. All right, guys, that's going to wrap it up for me, though, guys. I appreciate all you guys for being here. As always, be sure to like the stream and subscribe for more content like this. And if you're really enjoying the content, consider becoming a member today. That truly does really help support the channel. You'll get access to members-only content on my community tabs page, YouTube Shorts. You'll get members first access to videos that are released. And coming soon this week, I think this week, the studio is going to be set up. The stream is going to change. It's going to change drastically very soon. I think this week. It's going to take a whole new look, whole new vibe, whole new atmosphere, and a lot more content. So be ready for that. Join us, says Cooper. Join us. Join the cult. Join the cult, as E.A. Mead would say. Join the cult. Embrace me as your leader, and join the cult today. that'll freak some people out. Anyways, other than that, guys, have a great rest of your evening. And of course, we'll be back here live tomorrow, aiming for a 10 p.m. Eastern start time, so be on the lookout. And regardless, subscribe and turn on post notifications so that at least 3 or 4 times a week you're notified when I go live, since YouTube doesn't notify everybody every time, which is also frustrating. And that's why I try to go live consistently at the same time, so that you just know when to expect it. But like Lifeguard says, I do a lot of research and reading, and that's why I'm late a lot of times. I just want to put forth the best and the most accurate possible information. I get things wrong sometimes, but I always admit it if that's the case. And I go late because I do a lot of reading and pontificating and brooding. Brooding like the cult leader that I am. I just sit in my dark room and I tap my fingers on my desk and I just think about world domination. And I sulk. And I go, fuck it, let's go live. Do I have a job? Absolutely not. I am not a goyim, Scott. Only the goy work jobs. I own businesses. Excuse me. All right, guys, take care. Have a great rest of your evening. Glory to America, the best country on earth by far, and it's not even close. And may God restore glory to us. God bless the USA, and may God bless all of you. Have a great rest of your evening. See you here tomorrow. Bye-bye.